Welcome, everybody. I'm very happy to welcome Katherine DeFoyd, the founder of Growth for Good, back to the Arlington Heights Memorial Library. She is a returning champion of ours, having presented for us before. And I am thrilled that she's here again to talk about how to maximize fundraising for your online events.
Great. And Diane's going to keep her eye on the chat because when I have the slides up, I can't see it. And she'll shout out, Diane, you know I'm from a big family. Take a breath, lose your turn. So you have to interrupt me. And also we have some polls. We want you all, we're very scientific. Haha, not really. But please answer the polls in the chat. And Diane's going to we're going to see how well she does at estimating percentages. I'm Katherine DeFoyd, and I started Growth for Good more than 10 years ago. And we advise nonprofits on fundraising, strategic planning, board development. We roll up our sleeves and run events. And as you might imagine, last spring, we had about 6 galas coming up. Most of our clients are in New York, so they were New York galas. And we suddenly had to pivot and figure out what on earth are we going to do and how are we going to make these things work in the virtual world. So since that time, we've now produced just around 10 events. You know, I laugh when somebody claims to be an expert in this field. I'm like, come on. But we really have learned a lot, and I'm hoping to share that with you guys tonight. So, you know, kind of what we're going to cover today is, and I'm going to try to get done quickly with the slides so we have a lot of time to talk. I'm really, I believe that's the most helpful that I can be. So, you know, we're going to think about strategy first, just like with a live in-person event, a live virtual event, you know, you got to have your strategy in place. That's key. You really got to integrate your technology platforms with how it all works and understand how that is different than a live in-person event. Event logistics, we're going to discuss that, event marketing and communications, and finally, how do you measure success with this beast? So that's a very important thing to consider. So as I said, strategy first. You know, it's really a stitch in time saves 9. It's worth it to have your strategy set. So this now says, do you have a virtual event coming up in the summer or fall? I hope you, maybe it should say fall and spring because that's where they are. It's my mistake that I didn't fix this slide. But do you have an event? Yes or no? Diane, what do you see in there in terms of answers? People have real events coming up, or are we just planning them?
Well,
an event on the calendar.
Wait, am I unmuted? Yes. Somebody said they have a virtual event in spring on March 6th. Someone else says that there's the small local group, so no resources for overhead and looking for ideas for fundraising. And some other people have, you know, yeses and nos. Some people have them set to go, some don't. And someone even said next fall, 2021.
Well done. All right. So it's always good, and it's fine if you're a small group. You will definitely get takeaway ideas here tonight. So just like with live in-person events, we believe there are 4 key overarching goals. And we just feel like this doesn't change even in the virtual space. We know that what makes an event successful from a fundraising perspective is that, first of all, guests come together and they celebrate their shared love of the cause. You know, they really, you know, we're creatures who are really social. So we want to come together and do this together. People love to be seen and to see other people and interact and show off. We always know that if you have an honoree who hopefully is helping you bring in lots of money, people want to recognize that honoree, you know, especially if they've written a check on behalf of the honoree, and the honoree wants to see the people who've come. So again, this takes real interaction. And then we want everyone to leave with a warm and fuzzy feeling for the mission. So interaction is really required for that. So, you know, this is a long way of me saying that what we don't love are the virtual events that are pure live stream, where you tape sort of a pretend event that you're going to pretend is live and you stick it on YouTube. We think that doesn't create an environment in which guests can, you know, really interact with each other. So let's just sort of step back and think about, you know, how you translate any event into a virtual event. First of all, who is your audience and what really inspires them? And what from your mission can they personally identify with? And how do you make sure that pops to the front? And then how do you change them from attendees to participants? So I'm going to ask a little question. When it comes to comparing traditional live events to virtual live events, which do you think is true? 50% remains the same, 50% changes. 20% changes, 80% remains the same. 90% changes, 10% remains the same. So just put in 50-50, 20-80, or 90-10. And I'm putting Diane on the spot to shout out some of the answers. We think it's, important to understand what you're going to have to change.
Okay, we've got some guesses. 50-50, another 50-50. Someone guessed 90-10.
Yep. Guess what? It's 80-20. 80% remains exactly the same, 20% changes. So, it's like the scarecrow in the Wizard of Oz. When he's given a diploma, he knows he has a brain. Guess what? If you guys have been fundraising with live events, you already know 80% of what you need to know to make this event successful. So, that's a really important. So here's what does remain the same. You're raising the majority of the money in advance. Your guests are going to feel the power of the mission. The contributions are going to break down just like they break down with a live event. With all of our events, we've actually kept the sponsor levels the same and the ticket levels the same. In each instance, we've added one lower tick of a ticket, but otherwise we've left it the same. And it's been very interesting about that because it's proven something we sort of have felt and preached for a very long time, which is that, everybody worries about if their guests at their fundraising event are going to be getting enough dinner or a nice enough goodie bag. Actually, it's not that transactional. People are really coming because they believe in charity. So, that has really borne out in these virtual events. We've seen people really keep their giving at the same level. And that I can say across all our clients. Celebrating the honorees publicly, who hopefully are helping you raise money, that really remains the same. What really changes is the technology, how you get people to show up. It's a lot easier to blow off a virtual event, even if you've paid for it. And then how do you build, identity with the cause? And really, it's very drastically different when you think about how you create a compelling guest experience.
Katherine, a couple of things I want to mention. One person indicated that their events are not focused on fundraising. So I just don't know if there's anything.
Yep. Well, hang in here because you'll hear, even about that. So, just from the get-go, we present these events on what we call an event dashboard. It's a web page that's built that has different buttons. And this is just a wireframe of a web page. This would not be how it would look. I'll share that with you in a minute. So part of the event will be, in our case, is always presented in a Zoom room or maybe multiple Zoom rooms, Zoom meetings, actually, not Zoom rooms. If you need 4 different Zoom events in the same night, you really need 4 different Zoom licenses and Zoom meetings. We do believe there should be an MC. So anyway, these are elements that occur at a specific time. Then in addition to that, on our event dashboard, we always create what we call continuously accessible links. So for example, this could lead you to an online store or a video about the organization. And so when guests maybe want to hop out of a Zoom meeting, they can come down here and look at the continually accessible content. And I think it'll start to come clear what I mean. So absolutely doesn't have to be a fundraising event. We're just talking about the technology here and how you present this stuff and get people to go to the right place. So here's an actual dashboard that we built. We really think it's important to establish an event brand and theme, just like you would with a live event, and make sure that all of your elements throughout the whole event are branded to the brand. So on this dashboard, when you clicked here, it took you into the Zoom room where the main part of the program occurred. Actually, it kind of seemed like with each of these buttons, you were going to a different place. The truth is, each of these buttons led to the same room. We did everything in one Zoom room, but we just kind of did that to show people. And then as you clicked on these tabs, which this is not a live dashboard, explore the gala or donate now, that took you to a different place where you could explore the gala. And you'll see what this means further down. So a little more on it. Establishing the event brand. This was an event we did for Kennedy Children's Center. As you can see, this really felt like Kennedy Children's Center. So when you went here, you knew you were going to a party for Kennedy Children's Center. We really think it's important to recruit committed event chairs and co-chairs, honorees, host committee members. And I'll even say that for an event that's not a fundraiser, one of the big tricks is how you get people to show up. So people come to events a lot of the times, because somebody asks them to come. So even if it's not a fundraising event, it's important to really think through how you're going to get people to show up, just like it is with a live event. So talking about fundraising, how many of you have already identified an honoree who has explicitly agreed to raise money? Yes or no? Say yes if you have found an honoree, no if you haven't found an honoree.
We've got 3 no's so far. Another no.
So I urge you to not move away from the tried and true model of having a great honoree who's going to make it their business to help you fill the room. We find that even when we're teaching about how to do live fundraising events, we stress the importance of an honoree. And by the way, an event co-chair or chair is just like an honoree. We just call it something. In fact, often what we say to our clients is the day after the event was successful and your honoree is feeling really lovely and flush and happy, ask them if they'll be the co-chair for next year, which wink, wink, nudge, nudge is just like an honoree. So what are some important aspects of an honoree? We like to think about people who do business and who others' livelihood sort of depends on them, because we find those are the honorees who can really, move the needle and get people to show up. And a lot of time we get the question, what about getting a local celebrity or something like that as your honoree? Actually, we find celebrities do not drive fundraising. They can be kind of fun to have. People like to brag if they're there, but even if they love the organization, they're not necessarily really good at fundraising. The best honorees are people who really verbally commit to you in advance that they're going to fundraise, and they're people who folks, are willing to write a check based on, the honoree saying, hey, I really care about this cause. Host committee. What is a host committee? We define a host committee as someone who does not necessarily help you plan the event. We kind of think that should belong to the inner circle. We say to host committee members, no boring Zoom meetings, no dreary conference calls. All we want you to do as a host committee member is show up, sell 2 tickets, buy 2 tickets, and send out the invitation to your list. And again, this is really a show up strategy. How do we make sure we have enough people in the room? A big old robust host committee, long tried and true trick. We believe host committees are important for virtual events as well as live events. You do need to think about your budget, and I'm just going to stop and, as we're talking about, strategy, yes, virtual events cost less than buying a dinner or a luncheon for your guests. No, they are not free. I mean, you could have a very simple, fun Zoom meeting, and that could be, $14 a month. But in general, you do need to spend some money. And if it's a big event where you're raising, north of $200,000, it's really worth having an AV team. It's worth really paying someone to produce a video. I mean, I'm not talking about a lot of money, but you do need to spend some money to do that in a professional manner. I also think you should pay entertainers, since so many of them are on their back in this day and age, and MCs. We really like having an MC in the Zoom room where all the action takes place. And by the way, we're also now showing videos right in the Zoom room. It works really well, but that's where we really depend on an AV team to make sure that that transition between the video and whomever it is we're spotlight videoing is seamless. But the MC is really essential in the Zoom room to really keep the party going. And we really choreograph carefully what happens in the Zoom room. I'll talk more about that later, but right now on the strategy section, we're just going to keep this top level. Sponsor levels. As I said before, we have kept them the same. These are some real sponsor levels that were for one of our events over last spring. And, we got the money in. It worked. Sponsor levels and, ticket sort of offerings do change. Now everybody's getting a copy of these slides. So you'll be able to see these, work with this on your own. But these are actually sponsor benefits that we developed for a virtual event. We think these work very well. We actually are still doing donations in eJournal. We have ads and, we're selling the ads, and we're placing a PDF on our event dashboard the night of, and people can, download it, and it really becomes a eJournal program. And then sort of what's the timeline? What's the critical, timelines? We've actually condensed this to 4 months. In our dream, and I love you, whoever it is that's working for their fall 2021 event, when we do, I should stop saying that because these are real. When we do in-person events, traditionally, we like a 9-month lead time. We really do. We, because of reality, have had to condense our 9-month time into 4 months. But I'm not going to read the slide to you, but you can see these are kind of the things you really need to do by when. We have a lot of overlap between, determining the strategy and recruiting who's going to help you and getting everything done. And then it's really just, send out the invitations, follow up. One thing I'll emphasize that just like a live in-person event, we at Growth for Good place a lot of emphasis on pre-sale letters. So we don't wait for the invitation to start asking people for money. If you're repeating an event you've done in the past, the minute you get a date, even maybe before you send out a save the date, which by the way, we think should be a paper save the date. And we do think you should still send a paper invitation. We get mail merge real pre-sale letters out to folks saying, hey, you supported us this month at this level last year. Will you support us at this level this year? Even for the biggest events, usually the true number of sponsors, who are at that sponsor level, and that's the money you want in early, the big money early, those, that comes to like 30 or 40 letters. It is no big deal to spend a couple of days getting those letters out early to those folks. We also really think you should have the ticketing website up really immediately so that in those letters and in your digital outreach early on, you can link to your ticketing page and move that, get that going. Because a lot of people really in this day and age are doing it in real time. So, this kind of gives you what you're going to do. So that is strategy. Now we're going to move to the next thing we're going to talk about, which is how do we integrate all these technology platforms? Now, most people probably haven't been in a dark room in a very long time. I'm going to show my age. But I find when I'm teaching this class, it's like watching a photograph come into focus in the solution. At first, you're like, what? So just bear with me. I promise you by the end, I hope you understand everything I'm talking about. And if you don't, we'll make it clearer. So how do you integrate these technologies? First of all, you definitely have to have compelling content, audience development, create real audience interactivity, and, kind of seamless transition between all of these technologies, and then of course, a quality transmission of the actual event. We are mixing a ticket sale software of some kind. We really don't have a particular preference. I think we have most experience with One Cause, which used to be BidPal from Indiana, your neighbor. People use Classy, GiveSmart, but we do think having the ticket sales available online is really key, even when it's a regular event. There's an auction software that we integrate in. We're building out the web pages on WordPress mostly. We started working with a company that does conferences. They're called Event Titans, and they take care of the ticket sales and the event web page for us. We're integrating in YouTube, Vimeo for video. We're using Zoom extensively in our events. And so every time, just like this meeting we're having tonight, we want to have, in our what we call our main ballroom, we produce that in the Zoom room. The various receptions that are Zoom breakout rooms. We're having really great experiences with Zoom. And then Wowza for the live broadcast. If you're just broadcasting out, Wowza is a better platform than Zoom, but it doesn't allow for the interactivity. Facebook for social media. We don't love Facebook Live or YouTube Live. We don't like the way the interaction is. And then we're using Instagram Live and Twitch for dance parties sometimes after, but actually we're also doing that right in Zoom. So here we are back to our wireframe for our dashboard. So these are the elements that occur in the Zoom room, which is, the virtual cocktail party, live DJ feed. I'll show you some pictures in a sec. We have had the executive director pop in. Then we show maybe a 1.5-minute video, and then we bring up this honoree who's live, and we might have a video about the honoree. We're finding kind of this pattern of a 1.5-minute video followed by a live portion, followed by a video, really works nicely in a Zoom room, but you do need somebody who's savvy with the technology and has a mixer who can help you move seamlessly through that. And then when we're, meeting the honorees, we're moving into separate Zoom. They're actually separate Zoom meetings officially. We're calling them receptions. And then sometimes we come back together for an after party. The technology is really critical for donor outreach. and mostly because it can really enable peer-to-peer outreach. So as I said, you know, the real reason people come to fundraisers is usually because a friend of theirs says, hey, will you come and support my favorite cause? So we find that to be exactly the same thing, but you do need to really plan for your outreach on a communications calendar, and social media is pretty useful. I don't think it's the end all and be all. I think it's a nice tool. We still believe in paper invitations. So here is a picture of one of the event dashboards we had. In this instance, we had a series of little 2 or 3 minute videos on the dashboard that people could learn about the program. One thing that's very different. So when somebody's experiencing a virtual event, you know, they're here on a little laptop like I am talking to you, or maybe on their desktop, or maybe even on their iPad, and it's a really intimate experience. So we believe that the use of visuals becomes really important and not so many talking heads like my boring talking head right now. We really think it's great if in all your videos you have as much, you know, you show, don't tell, as your, you know, sophomore English teacher used to tell you. So rather than if we're introducing, we have a video for an upcoming event for a South Bronx organization called Mercy Center. And we're going to use a 1.5-minute video to introduce each of the honorees. And in each instance, rather than just having this talking head, the person who's speaking we're going to show them for a second, and then you're going to hear their voice, and just like a newscast or something, there'll be a lot of images. And we're also finding that in the virtual space, people have patience for about 2 minutes of videos. If you look at what you have patience for on a Facebook video, it's about 2 to 3 minutes max. 3 minutes starts to feel long. 4 minutes is an eternity. We are definitely arguing with some of our clients who want to do a really long video at times, but you know, we're really finding that short videos are better, interspersed with live elements.
Katherine?
So yes, question.
Are there any software or platforms you recommend for mixing live and pre-recorded video?
So we do that in Zoom. You show the video right in Zoom. So whomever is the host, actually there's a setting in Zoom that makes it possible for you to show video at a higher quality. And then that person, along with several co-hosts, do what's called spotlight videoing of the people who are going to speak. So if we were going to do that here, you know, right now you're seeing my camera. If I wanted to, am I a co-host? Spotlight video, Diane. I'll show you what I can do. Now, does everyone see Diane? If you're in speaker view, it would work. So remove spotlight. There we go. I don't know if that worked because but anyway, it's not a program. It's human beings. So my team of about 4 of us sit in the room with the AV team, and we switch between the video and whomever it is we're going to be spotlight videoing. I don't think it's working because of PowerPoint takes over the screen. So event marketing and communications. Any other questions on the technology before I move on? And we'll come back to talking about that.
There were none in the chat. Did anybody want to ask anything about technology? Oh, Peter said it worked.
Oh, it did. You saw Diane bigger than my it's funny, I couldn't see from here. I'm on a laptop, which doesn't have the full, it's a MacBook Air, which is actually, believe it or not, closer to an iPad. If I were on my regular Mac, I think it would have. So that's cool. So I'll show you guys that again. So let's pretend this is a video, the event marketing communication slide. And now I want to call Diane up to, you know, recognize her for her brilliant work at organizing these events. Now Diane is, you should see her face bigger. And now I'm going to stop. And so listen, anyone can learn to do this. Remove spotlight. There we go. So it's called Spotlight Video. I would say go onto Zoom. They have fantastic videos about how to do things. And so go check out how to use Spotlight Video. But we've used that really effectively. And now you can Spotlight Video up to 9 people at one time. So you can have, we have the video of the person introducing our honoree. We often then bring the honoree and the person who was in the video up, and we have the honoree just say thank you. And the reason we do it that way, and this is a good point about how this differs from when you're on a stage, is that we want to move the program fast. These events need to be 1 hour long, no longer. So, you know, that's how we manage that. Okay, So we're going to start talking about communications and getting people to show up because we haven't experienced this, but we have, maybe because I'm terrified of failure, but the stat we're hearing out there is that there's a 75% drop-off rate, even among people who pay. So we're making sure we have a lot of strategies to get people to show up, and I'm going to share some of those with you. So let's just talk about regular parties. What's the most common way you hear about a party you go to? So Diane, I'm going to let you read out the answers.
Yeah, give them a second to write some stuff in.
Yeah. I mean, do you hear about them word of mouth email, social media, push media, paid advertising, or bloggers and news stories? Things you show up to. What is it that's motivating you to get there?
We've got word of mouth. Anyone else want to chime in on the chat?
Whoever said word of mouth, you're absolutely right.
Oh, we've got a few more. Yep, word of mouth, word of mouth.
Word of mouth, word of mouth, word of mouth. Yay, what a smart, brilliant group of people. Yes, word of mouth is the way you hear. So why do we have a host committee? Why do we have an honoree? Why do we need the board to go out and help you get people to show up? Because, and by the way, when I say word of mouth, that extends to an email from one person to another. You don't actually have to physically see anyone. My husband and I have been cooped up here for a very long time. But email and, real human beings get people to come. So when you're planning, your outreach and your communications, you got to really think about that. So if you're going to use social media, yes, you can get some great information out about the event, but it's really that you're getting someone to represent your story on their social media to their friends. So in a funny way, that's just a new tool for something old fashioned, which is, getting your buddies to show up. Of course, direct mail, as much as we use mail houses when we're doing print invitations, and I think that's important, and digital invitations, the more you scribble a name on the outside of that invitation, the more it seems like it's coming from a real person with a real stamp, etc., the better. So, ditto for letters, that's why we only want mail merge letters with, that for your past sponsors really celebrate what they've done for you in the past and are personalized. That personal touch is what really gets people to show up. And, same with direct mail. So who here is working from a communications plan now? Like a real plan, we have month by month, how you're going to touch people. And this might be related to your event, or it might be related to all of your communications.
Peter says maybe.
Good. Maybe is better. Listen, it's so funny. When I'm much more of a doer than a planner. So now further in my career, I've become more of a planner, but I'd rather just go out and do it. Even to this day, I'm just like, oh, let's just do it. Do we have to really plan it? Obviously. Actually, the answer is yes, especially with communications. My partner would be very proud of me because she's more the planner, she's also a doer, but she works from a plan more than I do.
And Catherine, one more thing. He added tactics versus planning.
Yep. Okay, so we plan for the tactics. Good clarification point. So when we plan a communications, when we create a communications plan, we think about owned media, and we literally put out month, what month it is and what we're going to be doing. Paid media, shared media, earned media, and of course, just regular outreach. So we actually figure out, because guess what? You might not want the brochure arriving the same exact day as your, that tells about your programming as your gala invitation. So we really believe the outreach for all fundraising needs to be integrated into your communications plan. And so all of your tactics are expressed across a timeline. We also like to say who's responsible for them in truth. And what's going to happen? Okay, what is your shared media, meaning your social media? What does that look like? There's some other kind of strategies for return on engagement with virtual events. And I meant to have this, I'm going to jump up and grab it so I can show, well, I'll do it at the end. But we have really gotten into the concept of a swag box. I did not invent it, but I'm a really good copier. So a swag box arrives at people's houses a day or two in advance of the event. It can be full of very simple things. It's basically party favors, but that makes people feel like they're coming to a real party. So, if you've got somebody, you were going to spend, $75 on a dinner, and they're paying, $150 to be there. I think it's worth spending. We keep them under $25, including we use FedEx Ground because we find it much more dependable. About $8 to mail each box. But we send out the swag boxes to arrive a few days before with fun things for the event. And as soon as I have my slides down and we're in person on the Zoom, I'll share the swag box we did for our client, Hip Hop Public Health. Event logistics. All righty. So for all the folks who shared with me earlier that you've got an event on the calendar, are you considering a mix of live and pre-recorded, all pre-recorded or all live for your virtual event? And it's interesting, this answer, I'm going to let you answer. So the question is, are you going to do a mix of live and pre-recorded, all pre-recorded, or all live? And we're seeing the answer to this evolve. When we first got started, it seemed like everybody except for us was doing these pure pre-recorded events. We didn't like them. We thought they were dreadfully boring and mostly terribly done. We called them bad public access TV. And so we went in for this mix of live and pre-recorded, and we found it.
Catherine, everyone who has responded has said mix.
I love it. That has really changed. So exciting to hear that. So, what are the key elements, right? I'm going to keep coming back to this. Is your mission front and center? I hope so. Do you have an honoree with a live interview and maybe a video introducing? I hope so. Do you have an impactful story and a beneficiary testimony? That's a really important way to get your mission across. And then, of course, do you have a way that people can support right there in the Zoom room? I'll tell you with Wheels Up, I showed you the event dashboard before, and I'll share this a little more further down. They're an organization in a neighborhood in New York called Washington Heights. It's a primarily Dominican neighborhood. And, in the Heights, Lin-Manuel Miranda's from there. And so they have a great outcome. We decided instead of giving speeches, what we were going to do is have our MC / auctioneer interview some of the kids. And then we had some of our teachers and participants pepper some of the kids with questions. And the kids ended up being the star of the show. We did this live and in Zoom, and it was scary for us. It was a risk. But of course, the kids totally came through and talked about what they were excited about and looking forward to in college, and why. And there wasn't a dry eye in the house after it got done. So did we choreograph it? You betcha. And we told the kids, we coached the kids a little bit to keep their answers brief and really let participants speak. But if you can figure out how to tell your story with one of your participants, it's super powerful. So what's kind of the night like? So I'll give you the example of Friends of Wheels because I really think they did the best job. We started off with a DJ. I've got some fun pictures coming up. She was spinning with her husband, and she was right in Zoom spinning records. She had a computer that was directly connected with an Ethernet to the internet and a very powerful computer. And there's a setting in Zoom that makes it more able to send sound out. So she was spinning records and people were having fun. She was dancing with her husband. She was absolutely adorbs. And then the ED came in and said, welcome. And then we ran a 2-minute video that was pre-recorded about the work of Friends of Wheels so that we could get the mission across with lots of images. And, then she came back, she talked about each of the honorees. We went into 3 different Zoom receptions, which occurred over 15 minutes. And we invited anyone who didn't want to be in one of the Zoom receptions. Each reception was for one of our 3 honorees. And we found people hopped and they accessed those Zoom receptions from the event dashboard. We've been advised by Zoom not to use breakout meetings. They fail a lot. They're really meant for like 4 to 12 people. They're not really meant for like 40 people. So we've always used, however many licenses are needed. They went into the Zoom, then we came back together, we closed out, and then we had another dance party. And by the end, people were so into it, they had their dogs up in the camera dancing. It was so adorable. It was really fun. Is there a question, Diane?
No, not at this moment.
Okay, I like it when Diane interrupts me. So really virtual events are more complex than traditional events, and they do require integration of a lot of skill sets. I personally have grown professionally so much learning all of this stuff because you really got to think about, how you, use video and graphics and animation. You got to really think about that scripting and run a show. So, if you can find someone who's done these things before, even to just advise you a little bit, I'm not pitching for business, most of our business in New York, but it is good to, try to go to a lot of events and try to find some people to help you, because we've seen some pretty big fails. We've even had some fails, by the way. Not too many, but some little things have gone wrong, and one big thing has gone wrong for us. So we've learned some lessons. This is all new territory. The technical production, not to be underestimated, as I said, a proper company to produce the videos. And if it's a big event where you're going to really raise real money, we're plopping down about $5,000 for the night now. It's actually for 2 days of AV work. And we have somebody who has a big fat camera, and they're basically TV guys, and they know really how to pivot between our speakers and our video. And I'm so happy when I sit with those guys. I feel so much calmer. If you're doing a small event, it doesn't make sense to invest that kind of money, but for a bigger event, yes. And maybe in Chicago, it might be less expensive. If so, please let me know who it is you're talking to, because I do not need to be using New York guys, but I love my guys. I'm teasing. And then you really do need someone to fundraise and really focus on the fundraising. And you have to be careful that your fundraising team doesn't get sucked into all this technical production and, the creative part, because, this would be probably new skill sets for them. And it would be very easy to ignore their main job, which is to fundraise. So, when you're thinking about the division of labor, really stop and think that through.
Katherine?
Yeah.
Question about what constitutes a fail.
Okay, so we've seen some fails. We've seen people not plan for, this was in our event, but this happened more than once. We try to audit many of these things, especially early on, and people would put their event dashboard up on their website and did not understand that when 200 people try to log onto their website could not handle it. So they had not planned for that additional hosting, and people couldn't get into the event. Other fails have been really corny videos. We've seen videos not being, you have to make sure the computer that's playing your video has an Ethernet connection to the internet and the highest internet speed possible, and that the video is itself actually brought down in quality, not up, so that it plays beautifully across so we've seen, things where, the video goes like this. And most recently, we had a terrible fail that was a glitch within Zoom. We purchased a license for 1,000 people. Zoom attached the 1,000 people to the wrong license. We have the total paper trail. And at 100 people, we hit a limit with 1 hour. By the time we got Zoom on the line, beating over. It was horrible. I'm still getting over it. They've actually, Zoom, of course, you can't sue Zoom, because the first thing that happens is you sign this waiver, when, the terms of use. Yeah, and they admitted it was a mistake. And actually, they were very apologetic. Other people are really, really mad still. I'm kind of sympathetic to Zoom, because I just know how complicated this stuff is. And it happened. We have the paper trail. We know exactly what happened. Don't know why. They don't know why. It happened, so stuff can go wrong. What?
Another question.
Yeah.
When you pre-screen a video, can you lock it in so it cannot be changed?
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Yep. So are your guests comfortable with Zoom? And that's a question. We're seeing more and more yes to that. I'd be curious what we're hearing here. Are people, comfortable with Zoom?
Some, now they are. Someone else said a wide range of tech savviness.
Yeah.
And then a yes, and some are, some aren't. I'm guessing probably most people are going to have a mix, right?
Yep. So we're really thinking it's important to choreograph the Zoom room experience. Basically, what we're telling our clients now is that you plan for one person to be kind of the, MC. This could be a staff person, somebody with a big personality. Another person to really, the way Diane is doing for me, it's a perfect example, fielding the questions and keeping their eye in the chat box. And then you want to pepper the room. And then my team, the Growth for Good team, is on the back, and we're spotlight videoing whomever it is that needs to talk. So if we're going to do toasts, Diane would say, oh, I see that Laurel wants to give a toast. And then in the background, us with our little black turtlenecks, like the AV team, we spotlight video Laurel. Boom, up she pops along with whomever, and she can give the toast. So that's kind of how we're choreographing that. And that's how we really get guests to come together. We think it's fun to use fun backgrounds. Actually, these are from Taco Bell. I'm not joking. But you know, anything that gets people to feel like they're showing off is great. People love to see and be seen and interact. And so, you know, you can do that. The homes are full of props. You know, you can tell people to dial it in, or, you know, any funny prop you can get people, anything you can do to keep their fingers off the keyboard and keep them engaged in the event is great. Here was our fun DJ from the Wheels Up event who was spinning. That worked out so well. This is a great little quick story. Our honoree for this event, this was Kennedy Children's Center, is a gentleman named Michael O'Connor. He is retired, a Wall Street guy, and spends his winters down in Florida. And it turned out his best friend, who had dragged him onto the board many years ago, he's a board chair. They're an organization that helps kids from underprivileged neighborhoods under age 5 who need OT and PT, mainly are on the spectrum. You know, they try to help them arrive at kindergarten ready to learn. So it turned out that this guy had his funny little retirement side hustle of producing videos of himself mixing drinks, and he posts them on Facebook. So we said, you know, instead of him doing this boring introduction of his buddy Michael O'Connor, his other board member, let's have him mix our signature drink for the evening. Was the MOC, we called it, Michael O'Connor, which was actually, by the way, an old fashioned. Let's have him make a videotape of himself mixing the drink, and while he's mixing the drink, talk about Michael O'Connor and why Michael O'Connor is a great video. Because remember, I told you we want to make this more visual. It's not these boring ass, sorry, bad English, talking heads. So it turns out that they had both been bartenders at Colgate. Who knew? So he talked about how Michael had taught him back in the day to make an old fashioned. This was pure luck that this happened. And then he talked about what a giving and beautiful person Michael was. And then when we got to the part of the toast, everybody had their little drink, their MOC, which we had sent the recipe out for in advance. And people started toasting him, and it just set a tone. It was so much fun. So that's what's really different. I mean, you couldn't have done that in a regular gala. This became an incredibly intimate event. In that event, we had the honoree toasts occurring after the main program. Thank goodness, because we had planned for that to go on for 20 minutes. In fact, the Wheels Up event and the Kennedy Children's were the same night. And the MC, our MC who was sort of managing it, had to leave the event and go to the other event. And so the executive director, who's a very shy person, funny, sent me a text and she said, what should we do? There's so many more people who are putting their name in the chat box and wanting to give a toast. I said, let's keep going. We'll just go with the other event. So I left half my team. The other half went and started the other event. Those toasts went on for 40 minutes. And guess what? Because we had been making soft asks early on, we thought we would raise about, like a paddle raise, $2,000 in the Zoom, right in the chat, which we were recording. We raised $22,000 in the chat, which was a complete surprise and wonderful. We recommend you get the business level Zoom. Zoom will let you buy a month version of the business level, and this does give you the phone support. Not that it helped us in the other night, but the phone support is super important, and I do think that's been helpful since then. Here are all the different people you will need. I'm not going to read these to you, but as I said, you need, team members on the back end who are not involved with speaking and all of that. I want to say something about security. Zoom got a lot of bad press early on. All you have to do, and now it's actually required, is set waiting room. And we did have Zoom spotters in each of our events, and they watched. We were particularly worried with Hip Hop Public Health, in which we had a lot of hip hop folks there, and we were afraid there was going to be some racist stuff happening because we were right in the middle of the election, God forbid. So we were watching for that with JCRC coming right up, New York Jewish Community Relations Council. You bet we're going to have people watching for anti-Semitic stuff. With Wheels, we were afraid there could be some porn because we have high school kids there. And, not that the high school kid would do it, but some creep might do something like that. So we have our team watching in the way, watching the Zoom, scanning at all times. If we saw anyone inappropriate, because we enacted waiting room, you can remove someone permanently from a meeting. Any co-host can do that. I want to know if anyone's been to a dance party on Twitch. Yes or no?
Let's see. We've got some nopes. No, no.
Everybody should sign up for Twitch. I'm just going to tell you, you feel 10 years younger immediately, maybe 20 in my case. My 22-year-old kids were very impressed. It's a platform that you can throw parties on, and you know, DJs use it a lot. It used to be for gamers. It's a great way for an after party. I like to just throw that. And then how do we really measure success of these events? So first of all, you know, are you working from a gift chart for your event? And I want to kind of rush along so we have some time to talk. So I'm not going to wait for your answers. If you're not, you really should. You should figure out how much money you get in at each level. Because what we know about these events, just like live events, the way you raise money is at the sponsor level. And so you need to know how many sponsorships you need at each level and how many you're renewing from last year and how many new ones you need. And this is an actual gift chart from an actual event we did. So I share that. Anyone can email me and ask me more questions about that. And then I think, you know, think about the soft goals. Did your guests come together and build love for the community and for the cause? Did they have a chance to see each other, be seen, and interact? Did they get to celebrate and recognize the honoree? And did they leave with a real understanding about what the heck you do? And if you can answer yes to those questions, you've won. You know, that plus raising money, very important. Here are some, our very first event out of the gate was with Fiverr Foundation for Children. They provide summer camp and year-round after school for kids. They have fantastic outcomes. So that night, we normally, for their gala, we did this event in 8 weeks because theirs was one of the galas that we had to shut down basically and move to becoming a virtual event. We have about 400 people normally at their gala. We had 800 unique visitors. This was all just from Google Analytics, guys. We had about, each person clicked on the event dashboard about 5 times. In total, we had 1,000 visits. We think some people logged off and logged back on. And this was just other, you can see these other stats here. You know, most people seem to be on desktop or mobile, very few on tablet. Interesting.
Did you say that this was from Google Analytics where you got that?
Yes, it was. We set that right up on our WordPress site and we just gathered that data, which was super easy to do. And then I just always love this one. This was from one of the executive directors. And what's interesting about virtual events is she was able to invite a lot of program officers from foundations. And the next day, I think they were so impressed with the kids speaking and the teachers and the interaction and the authenticity of it, which I don't think you could have done when you have your kids sitting there in a, you know, ballroom with this tie on. I mean, because people were sitting in their apartments. So they got a call from a foundation. They're now in conversations with 3 foundations who were there that night. So that's amazing. A local university now has partnered with them. They got tons and tons. They got a new board member out of it. So there was a lot of stuff that happened. And I think it's because it was just an hour-long event and it's pretty darn easy to attend. So that's what I've got. And so I'm going to let you guys ask some questions and I'm going to grab my swag box to show you what a swag box is. So I'm taking off my earphones so I can hear. Diane, what are the questions?
Yeah, everybody, any questions or comments that you have, please stick them in there because while we have Katherine.
I'm here as long as anyone needs me.
Yeah,
amazing. We're on a mission to make this doable for people at Growth for Good. It's the mission of my company is to build capacity in nonprofits, and we really take that seriously. So let's go to gallery view. Oh, if you guys are on speaker view, are most people on speaker view?
I don't know.
Does somebody have a question for me?
Someone just asked if they're going to have access to the slides later.
Yes, we are going to have access to the slides.
Thank you. A comment. Thank you. Looking forward to the recording and the copy of the PowerPoint. Time to prepare dinner for the family.
Understood.
Yeah.
My goodness. I would like to say that we're also sending out a big, long, thick PowerPoint on all the tips to using Zoom. But, you know, be sure to understand that Zoom is updating every single day. I made that in the summer. I need to actually look back and see if anything has updated since then. But I hope that's helpful to you too. We find Zoom to be a terrific resource. Even through the crisis that we've just been through with them, they were actually pretty terrific. I mean, there's just, they were, you know, I figure, you know, if your venue had a fire. So I actually did have an event when one of the Hurricane Sandy hit. That was too bad back in the day.
Because we have a little bit of time, I think it's okay if somebody wanted to unmute and kind of say what their...
Oh yeah, I'd much rather you unmute.
Yeah, say what their organization is, and you know, maybe you have a question or comment from that, or to let everybody know as well.
Yeah.
I had a question, if that's okay. I work with an associate board that's young professionals who are maybe at most 30 years old. And a big draw of our annual benefit are like the games. So we play like a wine toss game where you pay like $5 for 3 chances, and you get to throw a ring over a wine bottle, and you get to take it home at the end of the night if you like ring it. And then there's a mini golf game. That's kind of a similar thing. Like you get entered into a special raffle if you make a hole-in-one on this mini golf course thing. So what kind of ways would you suggest that we like gamify our virtual benefit coming up in March?
Great question. You know, I think people are doing fun things with karaoke. People are doing fun things with scavenger hunts. I would say participate in a few Zoom events and figure out, you know, what you can do. But I think also thinking through fun swag box items. So we did the virtual gala for our longtime client, Hip Hop Public Health. They provide, they create public service announcements around public health. So the little swag box we sent out was this popped in everyone's mail, you know, came in a day or two before. It was a purple box. We just put the label for FedEx right on it. Obviously it was taped shut. We got everybody to put on, you know, the sunglasses, because Dougie Fresh is our founder, and Fresh always wears sunglasses, as you know. We had a little fun remix royale. A lot of people had mixed their drinks because we're public health. We had a mask. We had a jump rope because people should stay in shape. You know, that's kind of the messaging.
And somebody put in the chat that with their students, they do Quizlet live. They like that.
Love
that. Games online.
Quizlet is fun. Yeah, I think the more interactive you make these events, the better. And in a weird way, they're more intimate than what you can do in a ballroom.
I just had somebody talk to me about, they had a bourbon tasting, and that was part of in order. So they got this, what did you call it? A swag box, I guess. And it had the 5 different types of bourbon, like the mini ones that were given to them beforehand for everyone who signed up. And then online, they were all, you know, doing the different at the same time, tasting them and stuff. And I guess it was a real
so cute. Love that. Well, for Mercy Center, with Kennedy Children's Center, we sent out the recipe for the MOC, which is an old fashioned, and everybody made them. That was really cute. With Mercy Center, we're sending out mulling, because it's on December 8th, mulled wine spices, which yours truly is going to be making here on my dining room table in masks with my colleagues, because it was much less expensive. And then we're sending out 2 little mugs in a box that are kind of thermal mugs that look like stemless wine glasses, and people are going to make mulled wine, or they can make mulled cider for anyone who might be in recovery. So, you know, that's fun. I love it. And we're sending out 2 cookies because we're doing it at 7:30 and we're hoping it's dessert.
And Julia, who talked about Quizlet, also said Padlet could be used to create a gallery, and then you can put comments on them and whatnot.
Love Padlet. I'm learning to use it. I love it. I love doing these events like this because I learned from you guys. Take yourself off mute and let's just chat if you want.
That's all I got.
Oh, how about, has anyone been to any good virtual events that you thought were fantastic? Share that with us. I mean, look, I've only done 8. I'm learning. What has not worked? Can someone tell me something they thought was terrible? I can tell you something I thought was terrible. Let me see if I can find a picture. Actually, and I love the organization. I was a guest. One of my colleagues was on the host committee. I'm going to see if I can find the picture to show you guys. And they did this whole pre-recorded thing. I've decided I can't really show this or use it in the slideshow because it's a little...
I have such respect for the executive director of this organization, but she completely got schnookered, I think, into doing this pre-recorded thing with what was probably a pretty corny video company. Very corny, may I say. And so they did this thing where they had she and her colleague kind of very scripted speaking. Oh, I'm not finding it, darn it. Speaking like they were standing and floating in this with this background. If I could find you a picture, then they had this like rainbow background, and then in the middle of their points, they would have these giant. I'm not making this up. Champagne goblets come through and go like pop. It was the most bizarre thing, and this is a very serious organization that does very good work around cancer. And I can't find the photo, unfortunately, but I felt so sorry for them. I'm sure, and I tried to find if I could find a recording of that online. I'm sure that organization took that bad boy down so fast. If I were that ED, and by the way, most of us aren't really skilled enough to stand up and talk for 15 minutes into a camera. You know, not everybody's Katie Couric. And I mean, I would have looked just as goofy as she did. I felt so terrible for her. It was just, and because it was this long 45-minute pre-recorded thing, my little Apple MacBook Air kept spooling. And so my friend with whom I was there with, of course, she was at her home. She and I were texting, and she was already up to the cooking demo and mine was spooling. And so we weren't even at the same event anymore. And I was like, oh my goodness. So
we have another question. Are there any possible restrictions to shipping alcohol or food items in a swag box?
Good question. A lot of people are sending out wine. JCRC is sending out 2 beautiful bottles of kosher wine. You know, they had to look into the rules. There are some states like Pennsylvania, for example, where you may not ship wine. You'll have to check that out. I personally worry for 2 reasons. 1, breakage. I really worry about that. And 2, and this is just me being kind of nerdy, but I would worry if a minor got it. But, you know, people are being careful. People are doing it. You have to check out your local laws. You can ship in the state of New Jersey and New York alcohol. We are not allowed to ship to anyone who's in Pennsylvania. And so for us, you know, it's an hour and a half away. So that's a bit of an issue. We're just sending out the ingredients for the drink, and we're telling people to get their own alcohol. But most of my clients also don't want to invest that much money. We want to keep this. We want the swag boxes to be under $25 for a couple of reasons. 1, then we can say it's 100% deductible. But by the way, anything in the swag box that's branded, like this mask, because it's branded, it actually counts as marketing. It doesn't count as an item that has value. So.
Julia was not out of ideas. She had another one, a chat blast. You ask a question and the participants fill the chat on the count of 3 all at once, and it creates some suspense.
Julia, come join my team. That's a great idea.
Full of good ideas.
You know what? We really had fun doing that. It was our auctioneer who had the idea for Kennedy Children's Center to just, you know, do the soft paddle raise, which I told him to keep very soft, and have people put their, you know, their bids in the chat. And it actually ended up motivating other people to bid it, you know, just like in the ballroom when people like to hold up their paddle and people run over and get their name. You know, in the old days, now we do that electronically. We take down their number electronically. But in the old days, somebody would raise their number. You'd send a team member over there, write down their name. The next day you would call and get their credit card and charge it. So we didn't want people leaving the ecosystem of the Zoom room to go to someplace on the dashboard and put in their donation. So we said, the auctioneer said, just have them write it in the chat. So my team recorded it by hand. We also had it on record. Now that I know that Zoom is not perfect, I'm really glad we've always had a backup. When it comes to money, I really don't want to lose money. But you know, that works.
Cheryl, who's with Clearbrook, said we're using a local wine shop to send out our bottle or to send out our bottles. They have the proper packaging.
I would, it's very smart, Cheryl. I would not, and that's what we're doing with JCRC. We're using a company and they're shipping the wine, and they must have some protocol about who signs for it and so on. I would, we're going to be stuffing, you know, cookies and little, you know, bags of mulling spices here, but I don't think I would try. We stuffed the hip hop public health boxes ourselves. It was fun. It was actually fun. I actually love those kind of projects.
I had a question. Is the person who has it was like fall of 21, Is that a virtual or an in-person event? Like, I wonder, is anyone starting to plan the in-person events? I guess that's the better question, because maybe they're not even with us anymore. Or is everybody here still working on virtual?
Our thinking is, we used to think that we were virtual through the end of the spring. Now we're thinking we're virtual into next fall. Oh, and that's what Broadway is planning for, which is just so heartbreaking to me. But yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I was wondering about that.
Yeah. I mean, it's not worth losing your life, you know, risking your life to go to an event.
Oh, Julia, are you the one planning for next fall? You said it's in person, but you will see.
No, everything we're planning is still in person, with the understanding it might have to go virtual.
That's fine. You know what? You could pivot with 2 months out, I think.
Yep.
No problem. We did. But I think right now, when you're putting your strategy together, Julia, you should be, you know, thinking about what that pivot would look like. And
are there any other questions or comments from this group?
Great questions, you guys.
If not, then okay, then I am going to go ahead and thank Katherine very much for all of your information, and remind everybody that you will get a survey about this program. So please give your feedback, because we always want that, and also gives you an opportunity to give ideas for future programs. If there's a certain kind of programming that you'd like to see, we certainly want to hear from you about that. But we will include her slides so that you have access to all those goodies and all her ideas and stuff that's in there.
Feel free to reach out to me at kdefoyd@gmail.com if you have a question or you want to get on our mailing list or anything. There's my little plug.
Yeah. And I'm going to stop the recording, but thanks everybody very much, and have a great rest of your evening.